Hello, hello. Welcome to Courage Becomes Her, where we connect and share real life stories. I'll talk with women whom I love and I'm inspired by, women who are experiencing life just like you and me. I'm excited for us to gather together and cultivate confidence, courage, and joy in life and work.
What I discovered was what people were excited about enough to actually pay was something that I was not excited to build. And so that's where I had my big, okay, I've been down this startup road before. It's 5 years for an overnight success, right? I can see I have limited time. I'm doing fun things right now. Do I want to trade what I'm doing now to slog through something that I don't necessarily have the passion to build? And when I really reflected on that, I was like, yeah, this is now going down a path that I don't want to go down. And so I need to stop. And it's really uncomfortable for me to stop.
That was Lisa Duncan. I cannot tell you how excited I am for this conversation today with Lisa. Before I jump into that, let me just tell you a little bit about her. So she's a born and raised East Coast gal turned West Coast gal who, very much like me, prefers the beach over the mountains. She is an intuitive marketing and communications strategist, and she loves serving her community and the startup community through her work on the board of Sacramento State University's Executive MBA program. She also loves to inspire us about how we can style our sentimental memorabilia and our family heirlooms. And we can find her on regular walks with her husband and their dogs. And she also loves enjoying spending time with her adult daughters. So I twisted Lisa's arm a little bit for this conversation today because it is an uncomfortable one in the sense that what she had expected as an outcome turned out to not be what happened. So this leap of faith that she took was basically to not move forward with launching a business that she had worked hard toward. So we talk through a very rigorous and rich discovery process that she took using that logical thinker, intuitive strategist side of herself that ultimately led to the very difficult decision to actually not launch the startup that she had been working on and working toward. So in this conversation, we talk about the process itself, the questions that she asked herself, and ultimately how she arrived at the decision that she did. We also have a really neat and engaging conversation about how the Enneagram affirmed her decision to not move forward with launching her business. And then she shares some really insightful tips that other entrepreneurs can use, whether you're at a place of starting a business, wanting to start a business, or you're not experiencing the success that you anticipated. So I'm just so tremendously grateful for Lisa's willingness to talk about a difficult journey that she's been on over the last year or so. And I know that you will be inspired and encouraged and you'll learn from her as well. So thanks so much for joining for this conversation today with Lisa. Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation of Courage Becomes Her. I'm genuinely grateful and excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to talk about a very unique leap of faith here in just a moment, but let's first get to know you a little bit. So where is home?
Home is in Davis, California.
All right. And you've been there for quite some time.
And for about 10 years. Yeah. Maybe a little bit, maybe 12 years. Yeah. And before that, San Francisco was home for 20 years.
And then prior to that, East Coast gal.
I am an East Coast gal. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. You've gone from one side all the way to the other.
Yes. I'm a coastal person.
There you go. I like that.
I prefer beach to mountains. I always say beach on those questions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Me too, for sure. All right. What's the first concert you ever went to?
So I was a late bloomer to concerts. My first concert was when I was in college. I went to Syracuse and they have the Carrier Dome, which brings in big concerts. So my very first concert was actually Pink Floyd, which was
Wow.
quite an introduction to the concert scene.
That would have been quite the introduction for sure. Oh my gosh. Wow. What a memory that is. Absolutely. So good. How about what is filling your cup right now? Something that's made you laugh or filled your cup in the last day or so?
Oh gosh. Family always just fills my cup. My
Mm.
daughter's home from graduating. She's home, and so we're having a great time together. My husband, nobody can make me laugh harder than my husband. My other daughter is, off studying abroad and checking in with the most hilarious stories. So it's really just family.
Oh, I love that. Good. Good for you. Family is wonderful, no doubt. How about a current obsession in any genre?
Oh gosh. So like I'm like an obsessive person. Whatever I'm working on is my current obsession.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
if I literally just before I came on here, I was doing word games and I start my morning off with Wordle, Octordle, crosswordle. So maybe word games are like my, in this moment, current obsession.
Yeah, yeah. That I have never really gotten into that, but I know so many people who are and they love to start their morning that way. So I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And staving off dementia in the process, which is something that is all in the back of all of our minds, I
Of
guess.
course. Yeah.
So good. All right. How about your love language?
So this I don't really know. I mean, I think like when I'm showing love, it's through acts of service.
Okay.
And when I'm receiving, I think it's more like affirmation. Is that one of
Uh-huh.
them?
Yeah. Words
But
of
it
affirmation. Hmm.
but it's not necessarily the words, it's like the data of affirmation, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Like I feel like, words sometimes people can just say stuff. So it's really like that kind of proof of affirmation,
Uh-huh.
if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And that goes with your Enneagram, which I know, but what is your Enneagram?
I am a 3, the
Yes.
achiever.
Yeah, that's, I think, I mean, most threes like words of affirmation in some way or another, like is really meaningful to them because they want to know that you're noticing their achievements, or
Yeah.
want others to know. Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Well, I know we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. How about your best movie or show that you've watched in the last year-ish?
Oh my gosh, there's so many good ones out there. Along with the obsessiveness, I can binge watch shows. And so the
Yep.
one that I'm binging right now is Poker Face. And
Oh, yeah.
I like it. It's interesting. They weave this story through different context and perspective. And so I kind of find it's an interesting storytelling method that they use. So I like it.
Okay. Yeah, good. I haven't watched that, but my mom was telling us about that. So I'm curious about it for
Yeah.
sure. So, yeah, good. All right. How about a book that transformed your life?
So this is a hard one because there's so many good ones. But I will say probably the book The Artist's Way by
Oh, yeah.
Julie Cameron.
Yeah.
And I was kind of late to the Artist's Way party, but I read it after I had gotten my MBA. So I had done a bunch of, academic type of reading for a long
Yep.
time. And then I felt like I needed to really get in touch with my creative side. So I read the book
Mm.
The Artist's Way. And what was interesting about it was it kind of ended with this challenge to, just say yes. And
Mm.
I kid you not, I finished the book and a good friend of mine sent me a link to the Pink Creatives retreat.
Awesome.
And like, I didn't even think about it. I'm like, okay, I guess this is my sign to say yes. And I said yes, which led me down this path of, meeting you and, being where I am now. And so I'd have to say that was probably the most influential one because it prompted the most kind of action and change.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, new creative expression in your life. I love
Yes.
that. Good. Yeah, that is definitely can be a very transformational book for sure. So, well, thank you. Appreciate getting to know you a little bit. So, I've just been looking forward to this conversation and am really eager to dive into it because I know that there's a lot of richness in it and that this topic that you and I are going to talk a little bit about comes up in so many of my coaching conversations. So, kind of in my own language, and I obviously want to hear it through yours in just a minute, I would say that you took an enormous leap of faith to not move forward with a business idea and to choose to not take a leap of faith, to choose to do something different than what you had maybe originally set out to do. And I just find it's so courageous, the journey that you have been on. So we'll talk about that. I want to break that down a little bit in a minute. But one of the things that you said that I think is such a great starting place for us, that you said to me, and I hadn't really thought about it this way at all, is that for each of us, when we take our leap of faith, it usually comes from a place of being supported by a mentor or our spirituality or our faith or a process. And I think that through our conversations over the last year, like in particular, you have leaned so strongly on process. And I've told you numerous times, like I'm just awed, literally awed by the process that you have taken and undergone, and that you were so courageous to just live into that process and allow it to inform you and to learn from it yourself. So before we dive into the process that you took, like talk a little bit about those three of, mentoring, spirituality / faith, and then process, and maybe for you, how that, how you land on the process side of things when you are in a decision-making realm or, navigating something in life.
So I am a very, very strategic and intuitive person,
Yeah.
right? It's this odd mix. I have had moments in my life where I have been able to draw on faith to make quick decisions without really thinking about it. And I've had times in my life where I've really had to rely on mentors to help me make those decisions because, they've been there before and I need that advice. But at the end of the day, I'm a very strategic and logical thinker, and I'm a 3. I'm an achiever, and I take great comfort in knowing that A plus B will get me to C.
Yeah.
Right. I that's my comfort zone is just knowing that if I set out a plan, that I can take these smaller steps to achieve the plan.
Yeah.
And I'm flexible enough to know that I'm not always going to go in a straight line, but I can have enough trust in the process that if I see an endpoint, then I have enough faith in myself and confidence in the process to continuously take steps that will get me there. And so there are times when I'm working towards a goal that I don't really know if what I'm doing is right, but I just force myself to take a step, no matter how small, because I trust in the process so much, if that makes sense.
So good. Yeah. No, I love that. I think that is so good. And I think, one of the things that you and I have talked about is that by nature, our culture is not that way. In fact, I was just watching a movie yesterday, one of the Night at the Museums, and one of the characters in there says, Americans don't plan, they just do. And I think that speaks to this so much. Like, it is so contrary to our business culture overall to actually have a process, to trust the process, to work through the process, that when we see someone, like you who has such confidence in the process that it's like, oh my gosh, that's totally amazing and totally inspiring. It just feels, it's so countercultural, I think. But we think that we are that way, but we really aren't. Like, by and large, we're just people who, jump in the deep end or, dive right in, sort of a thing.
Yeah.
So
leap without looking.
That's right. Yeah.
Which I'm prone to doing as well. Right. I've done that in the past. And so I've noticed in my experience that when I don't trust the process, that I can make some big mistakes that I might not necessarily recognize until way after I've made them.
Yes. Yeah. So talk through what the process was. So a year-ish ago, maybe more than that, I don't remember the exact timeline, you had this business idea, and in order for you to feel comfortable with moving forward with it, you decided to undertake, as I said, a really rigorous process to test out your idea, test out your theory, see if it's something that the market would, want and be desirous of. So kind of just walk through some of that, the process, so we can kind of see behind the scenes.
And I'm also going to back up and say, I have done a startup-ish thing before, where it was not a commercial success, right? I call it my failure because in our, when we talk about like corporate America, right, we weren't a financially sustainable company. We had to shut it down. So I come with the experience of that and the perspective looking backwards of where did I not go through the process and how did that fail me there? And so taking the lessons learned from that experience, and really refining the process, right?
Yeah.
So I knew going into this next idea venture that I wanted to be smarter. I wanted to be leaner. And I wanted to have an exit strategy because those were three things that I felt like we could have done better last time. Right. So I totally was very methodical about making sure, like, I think most startups, they jump in, they're jumping in is because they just focus on feasible, right?
Yep.
Is it possible? Can I build this? Right. And we all think we can, right? And that's how most businesses start. I can do it. I can make it better. Right. But we never think about, is it desirable? Do people want it? And we never think about if it's viable. Can it be profitable? And so going into it this time, I was like, I know anything is feasible. I need to focus on, is it desirable? Is it viable? So I was very methodical in trying to figure out and test those things. And so for desirability, right, I used Instagram to help understand the desirability of it, and understand who the, potential customers might be in the market, right? I wanted to understand that. And I went through a program. I'm in the Sacramento startup community, which is an unbelievable resource for startups in this area. I mean, the ecosystem is amazing. I think personally better than Silicon Valley, but whatever. So one of the resources that I pulled it from this area is a friend, Dan Casas-Murray, runs this program called the Lean Innovator, which really takes you through 5 weeks of really understanding the customer problems and kind of creating hypotheses around your unique selling proposition. And so the nice thing about that is you're really honing in on the desirability of your idea. And so again, lesson from last time was I'm always trying to, and I say I was bringing my idea through it. I didn't have a product. I didn't know what the product would be, which is a very uncomfortable thing because you don't know what you're selling. And so it's hard to say, like when somebody asks, oh, so what does your business do? I don't know. I really try to, as a lesson learned, stay in love with the problem and not the solution. And so my problem that I was solving was this one big elephant of a problem. And I was trying not to get down into the weeds of what I thought the solution was.
Yeah.
And so I was really testing more for the desirability of, is what I'm thinking a problem really a problem? Right. So anyways, it was a really great program where you really dig deep and you do customer interviews. I did a lot of customer interviews to really hone in on, what the hypothesis could be, right? I think that it's X, but I'm going to ask the customer, right? So when you do this, what do you think? And, they gave a lot of different methods on how you can test to not put your biases into their answers.
Yeah.
It was great. And so I get this feedback and I realize, kind of what I thought people had a problem with might not really been the problem. The real problem that maybe I'm trying to solve is this problem.
Yeah.
So it kind of changes things. And had I been tied to an actual product, I probably wouldn't have heard that. So
that's good.
Anyways, and so then the next thing I did was there was another program that kind of took off where that ended. It was something called Traction Thinking by Josh Daniel Miller. And anyways, there were a couple of great lessons from that, which was, so Traction Thinking was all about how can you get that initial traction from your early adopters, from your initial customers, because understanding that is going to give you the traction you need to get to your later customers, because they're not the same. Their needs aren't the same, right? Who's going to work on your product, who's going to purchase your product first is not going to be the same as who's going to purchase it, after it's already established in the marketplace, right? Yeah. It's different. You approach it differently. And so it gave a lot of good insights on how to really hone in on who those early adopters are and how you can leverage that. And one of the biggest ahas I got from that was when JD said, you are not your customer. And I think that's another thing that a lot of new businesses and startups think is, I love this, I can do this, so I'm going to do it. And they put together this customer persona that's themselves.
Yep.
Because they think that they can do it. But JD said something that was brilliant, and it was, you're not your customers because your customers are not building the product to solve it.
Yeah.
And that was just my mind kind of blew up, because it's like, oh, of course not, because I've gotten into that too, where I'm like, well, I have this problem too. And but I'm not the customer because I am more motivated to solve it. Right. So the trick is finding people who have the problem, who are motivated enough to buy it.
Yeah. But not to solve it for themselves. Yeah.
But not to solve it for themselves.
Yeah. Wow.
So anyway, so that was a big aha. And then the other thing that was really great about the traction testing, which was a big lesson for me, was you don't really want to spend a lot of money building your product to test it, right? You want to, there's something called a minimum viable product, right? Which is probably too much to build at this stage, right? When you're just trying to test whether or not there might be paying customers for it. And so one of the things that I did was kind of have a suspicion that my product would end up being something like an app, right? And so instead of building an app, I basically used presentation software and I kind of built buttons on it. And then I just kind of put it out there for some customers, a lot of whom I found from my IG community, right? And asked them to test it. And I didn't tell them what it was. I just kind of had a flow for them to work with. And then I observed them on Zoom as they tested it. So I could see, instead of them telling me what's important, I could see what was really important by their behavior. And it's the behavior that really informs what they're going to do more so than what they say they're going to do. Yeah. Because so many people will just, tell you because they're nice, right? They're going to tell you what they think you want to hear.
Yes.
Anyway, so I did a lot of testing. And then what I discovered was what people were excited about enough to actually pay was something that I was not excited to build. And so that's where I had my big, okay, I've been down this startup road before. It's 5 years for an overnight success, right? Do I can see I have limited time. I'm living, I'm doing fun things right now. Do I want to trade what I'm doing now to slog through something that I don't necessarily have the passion to build,
Yes. Yeah.
you know? And when I really reflected on that, I was like, yeah, this is now going down a path that I don't want to go down.
Yeah.
And so I need to stop. And it's really uncomfortable for me to stop because I'm the three,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And like I just had this conversation with my pink creative gals the other day. Like I feel funky. I feel like I'm in a funk because I paused. I don't know what those steps are moving forward yet.
Mm-hmm.
But yet I do trust the process that it will reveal itself. Something will happen. I'll test something else out, and that will give me more information of where I need to go.
Yeah.
So that's
Wow.
where I am.
I love it. And that's, I mean, I think that to me is such a valuable part of this is you being able to say, what is authentic to me is to not move forward in this. Like this, you would have been in a place, like if we could project forward, like you had done it, you would have been miserable or
Yeah.
disappointed or frustrated. And I think in this era of, oh, just go and build a course, oh, just go and create an app, like, there's this push for us to dive into all of those things, which sometimes, they are great ideas. Like your idea is a great idea, but to actually produce it and make it moves us into a place where we're just not being true to ourselves and we're not following, our giftings, our skills. We're doing it just because, there is that, as you said, I love the word you use, the feasibility, like just because there is a feasibility. And that I think, I hear it so many times of people who do go down that path. And then a year later, they're just like, I hate this. Like, I'm not enjoying it. I'm not having fun with it. Yeah, maybe I'm making some money on it, but it's not what I really want to be doing. So I appreciate that so much about you, that it was not only trusting the process, which you clearly did do, but it was also you trusting yourself and being able to say, I know that this is not what I want to be doing. I know this is not what resonates with me. So I just
Yeah.
love that so much. Hey, friends. All right, as you're listening to this conversation with Lisa, are you thinking about how you're feeling stuck or in a funk or disappointed with how your leap of faith has turned out, not meeting your expectations or what you had hoped? Well, just a quick reminder that I have a special for the month of March, that if you do 6 months of coaching with me, you'll get a 7th month for free. And my clients and I go through all of the elements that Lisa and I talked about of how it is that you develop a process that is true to you, but also really helps you to go through the desirability, the feasibility, the viability of your business, and really understands where there might be a gap or something that needs to be switched up, and help you to get to a place where you are just feeling much more confident about your business and your work, and being able to go to market with what it is that you are offering. And I would just love the opportunity to mentor you through that and to help you through that and to find and cultivate that confidence, that courage, that joy in the work that you are doing. So reach out to me today, Laurel@laurelemery.com, and let's schedule some time to connect together. So I want to come back to, because you've had some revelations of late around kind of the Enneagram 3 component of this, and kind of how that could have potentially steered you, away from this decision, and maybe had you make a different decision that you would have been really uncomfortable with. So maybe just share a little bit about some of your ahas for that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it was actually when I was listening to your podcast with Wendy, and she was revealing that she was also a 3. And it got me thinking about it a little bit more. So I went back and I checked, and I realized that I am a 3 in stress,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I've had a lot of things happen the past few years, professionally and personally, and that just kind of moved me into this place of stress. And so for people that don't know, when 3s are in stress, or what stresses out 3s, are things like not making progress towards a goal, or feeling like a failure, or not being acknowledged, or not accomplishing things. Those things will put 3s in stress. And so when they're stressed out, to handle things, that they just kind of go into like that achievement mode, right? Like busy work, achievement, to do things. So it carries you far, right, in a way, because that one step forward thing that I was talking about.
Yes.
But it can also lead you to doing things longer than you should be doing, because you're getting that sense of yay, because you can check things off your list.
Yeah.
But really, they're not things that you really want to be doing.
Yeah.
So it can cause a lot of angst. But it was funny, because when I realized that I was a 3 in stress, so much of my behavior and thoughts and things made a lot more sense. And really, I recognized too how much the process kind of helped me fight those stress behaviors.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. And it comes back to just like the value and the importance of self-awareness, and really just understanding what makes us tick, what does move us to a place of stress. So I really appreciate your learnings, and it obviously, it didn't happen when you were in the process and in the decision-making process. Those awarenesses came later, or ahas came later. So what a great affirmation of your decision after the fact. So
yes. And actually, it makes me feel a lot more comfortable with my decision not to move forward.
That's so good. Yeah. So good. What, I mean, you've alluded to it and we talked kind of around it a little bit, but just maybe more explicitly, like how for you did you get to that place of like being at peace with the decision and being able to say, okay, I know that this is the right decision?
Well, a lot of introspection, right? A lot of really looking at, if I go down this path, this is what it will look like. This is where I want to be. How different are those two things? So it really so much introspection, and having an awareness of like another end goal, right? We're all working for a reason, right? And it's not necessarily the details of our work that's the reason. So I'm kind of always focused on the bigger goal of how I want my life to be. And does this get me towards that? Yes or no? Or is there another way I should go?
Yeah, good. I really appreciate that so much. So I think these 3 words that you brought in, feasibility, desirability, viability, I think there's such tremendous value in those 3. And I think we're in this era where people say like the biggest issue, I think Wendy even said it in her and my conversation, the biggest issue for people is brand awareness. But I think we get to that place where brand awareness becomes the issue because of not paying attention to the 3 words that you used, and looking at those feasibility, desirability, viability elements. Are there any thoughts that you would kind of share on those, because you are so strategic, and have a tremendous background in marketing, that you would like help someone to say like, okay, you're having trouble with brand awareness, go back to this part of the triangle or something?
Yeah. So for me, like with brand awareness, or with anything, right? Like it always comes back to rethink your purpose, right? What is the purpose? And so let's look at some of these different levers here. So like for brand awareness, what is it that you need the brand awareness for, right? Are you trying to sell more product? Well, do you know that people actually want that product that you're trying to sell, right? Because there could be a huge disconnect there.
Yeah.
And, it's not necessarily that the idea of the product is disconnected. It could be, how you're delivering the product or, the pricing of the product, right? There are so many other variables. So, I would come down to really honing in on the purpose of what it is that you're doing or why you need it. There's one great exercise that I think helps people in kind of getting down to root cause stuff, which is called the 5 whys. Have you heard of that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the 5 whys is such a great exercise, which is basically, why do you need brand awareness? I need brand awareness so I can sell more things. Well, why do you need to sell more things? And you just kind of drill down to like the root cause of what the issue is. Yeah. And so that's, I think that's a valuable tool for people to use.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you. Yeah, that's a terrific tool. What have we not yet talked about for you in this huge leap of faith, courageous leap of faith that has been a part of your journey, or you might want to share with the Courage Becomes Her community?
I think that there are so many resources out there that, as people are trying to grow their business, I think leaning in on the resources that kind of give you that leap of faith, whether it's mentors, whether it's process. The process, there are a gazillion processes out there for people to use to help them. I didn't come up with the whole focus on feasibility, viability, or, I didn't, that's like a known thing in the startup community to focus on those 3 things. So there are so many different tools and books and resources to use in the process. Mentors, there are so many communities to get involved in, coaches, business coaches to lean in on. But there's so many opportunities to find mentors, and of course, faith, right? Yeah. And so, I just would encourage people to really lean in on some of these other things that can help get through the challenging times. Yeah. Because startups, 90% of startups fail, right? Yeah, that's the reality. Right. Yeah. But you got to do it, right? Because you don't want to regret it, right? So, I love startups. I love the vibe of startups. I love the feel of entrepreneurship. So I'm always going to encourage people to try. Yes. Be smart about it, right? That's right. But try and know that you have all of these things available to you to help get you through it.
So good. You are speaking my love language. You know how much I love community, and I'm a believer that we call on each other and the resources that are available to us through that. So thank you for calling us.
Can I just say one thing too? Yeah. So that statistic, 90% fail, is one of we brought it society fails, right? They're not a failure for you because you're learning and you're putting yourself in a different situation than you were before. And you never know when you're going to draw back on that experience, right? So I love the expression, failure is feedback, right? And so I think that everything going forward, I think that when you're working with a startup, when you're working on a new business, you're just a sponge of new information and new learning and new growth. And you never know how that's going to pop up in the future.
That's right.
But it does. It always pops up in the future. And you're you look back and you think, I could never have been where I am now if I had not done this back then.
100%. Yeah. So. Thank you. Yeah, that is so true. Such a great word. So, well, thank you so much for letting us, have this look into what was a tremendous process for you, but also had a very different result than what you had maybe anticipated from the beginning. So thank you for your vulnerability.
Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me share. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Such an encouraging conversation with Lisa. I know that you are walking away just super encouraged like I am. I am so grateful for her being willing to share her thoughts and insights with us. And there's so many great takeaways. But one thing that I really want us to be thinking about from what she shared is that there is no such thing as an overnight success, that these things that we are seeing in front of us that seemingly appear to be overnight successes are things that have taken years to get to what we currently see today. And so to not allow yourself to become discouraged when you're seeing the fruits of labor that has been happening for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years in the making. So I just really appreciate her bringing that myth back up to the surface for us and just reminding us that it takes time, it takes energy, it takes effort. And if you're discouraged or frustrated or in a funk with where you are right now, then look back at your purpose, like she said, and think about what it is, why you're doing this, what it is you're doing it for, and to look through those elements of feasibility, desirability, viability, and just really, spend some time, introspection time, investigating those and looking for, is this an opportunity for you to pivot? Is this an opportunity for you to maybe close down some part of your business and open up something else? So I just am so grateful for her encouragement in our conversation today. I also want to bring up to you that we talked a lot about Enneagram today. If you don't know about Enneagram and you're curious or interested, I would definitely recommend starting with the book, The Road Back to You by Ian Crone and Suzanne Stabile. It's a great starting place if you don't really know anything yet about Enneagram and aren't even sure what your Enneagram might be. So I've got that linked in the show notes for you so you can do some investigation. So thanks so much for joining today for this just encouraging